Take your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
Well, Manny, I don't know officially. I was not on campus this week, but I am prepared to say the Gophers are celebrating going 1-0 in bye-week championship season as we now turn our attention to Oregon Ducks championship season, where the Gophers wake up on this Sunday. Currently listed, I know tiebreakers and teams have similar records, same records. Currently listed as 7th in the Big 10/11/12/14/18. And again, don't really care how you got there, Manny. Some of the wins were true, grinded out, maybe schedule wins just because they weren't the world's greatest teams in the Big 10. But if you were going to tell me in mid-August that this team on November the 9th, as we record this podcast, would be 7th in the Big 10 football conference, officially in the upper half, I would say, hey, great. That's a very nice season. So I use this week kind of as a retrospective. Can it be introspective if I'm not officially a part of the program? I don't know if it can or if it can be. Yeah, the Iowa loss is still annoying, not just because you lost, but because you didn't compete.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I'll give the football coach credit. We talked about it last week. I know Michigan State is not good, but to start off winning that game like you did, lead at half, Michigan State punches back, and then you come back and win that football game, I do think it says a lot about the state of the program, the overall health of the program. And I'm feeling good as we start to look forward to Oregon. Now, I don't know if I'm necessarily feeling good about playing Oregon, but I am overall feeling good on this Sunday, Manny.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about things too. I don't expect Friday's game to go particularly well for the Gophers. I think they're going to be overmatched on and really probably all three phases of the game. I mean, maybe special teams they'll do fine, but it's not going to matter if offense and defense doesn't play well. But I think one of the things that we have to look for and hope for is that they compete and that they can make it a game, keep things interesting for, if they go into Eugene and keep things interesting for 3 quarters and then Oregon just, because they're the better football team, just kind of pulls away in the 4th quarter, I can live with that. If you end up losing, 35-20 or something like that, I can live with that if you're going into the 4th quarter down, 21-17 or something like that, because that would make things really interesting and keep me compelled to want to continue to watch. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Certainly not expecting the Gophers to win this game. This game and the Ohio State game were like the 2 guaranteed losses that I had on the schedule before they even played that first game against Buffalo. So I just want to see them compete, play well, play hard. And we'll kind of go from there and then, I think turn our attentions to, getting ready to play a Northwestern team that is not going to be a pushover. Now they got ran out of the Coliseum out in LA by USC this weekend, but that's still a plucky Northwestern team that can, get you into some grinded out, low scoring games where you might have to really buckle down and find a way to win. So I think getting through Oregon, competing hard, staying relatively within the game, get out of there healthy, get ready for Northwestern the next week, I think is going to be the goal. That's what I'm going to be looking for.
For what it's worth, the ESPN matchup predictor, which I think can give you a little bit of an indication, but it doesn't really mean anything. You still have to play the game. But it gives Northwestern a 63% chance at winning that game. And Thor, who joins me on Thursdays for the unofficial Purple Daily pregame show to Thor's Day, has said multiple times, basically since I'd probably say mid-September, that Northwestern's going to be favored in that game. And to your point, what we know and what they've been able to accomplish in the Big Ten, they probably should be favored. And I think they will be. We'll see about this time a week from now. On Oregon specifically, Manny, you kind of took the words out of my mouth a little bit. I want to see two things, and they're kind of one and the same. Aside from what would likely be, Manny, the upset of the weekend in college football, which I'm not willing to say can't happen. I think it's very unlikely. If Oregon was coming to Minnesota, I would give the Gophers a puncher's chance. PJ against the really good upper echelon Big Ten teams. Him and his program and his teams have played much better against those teams at home than on the road for obvious reasons. A part of the calculus, though, Manny, is he would never say it. I don't think the team practices and preps this way, but it does just always feel like they play some of these opponents hoping to minimize damage, get in, get out, not get injured. If we can lose by 24 and feel good about it, we'll take it. The one exception in recent memory being the Michigan game a couple years back where they stormed back, probably could have won the game if it wasn't for an offsides call on an onside kick when a player, I'm not willing to say he wasn't offsides. It didn't look so egregious that you would throw a flag. But
it was a marginal call. They never should have called it, and the Gophers should have had a chance to,
Correct. That's neither
but
here nor that's neither here nor there. I'm like you, Manny. I do expect the Gophers to lose this game. To steal a term from you that I love, Manny, this is a pack a lunch kind of game. It just feels like you're going to go in there. More than likely, you're going to take your medicine. You're going to get out of there, and you're going to hope to get right when you go to Wrigley the following week. But there are two things I'm hoping to see. They're one and the same. You covered it. Can you be competitive? Autzen Stadium holds 54,000 people. Very similar to Huntington Bank. I almost said TCF Bank. Then I almost said US Bank. It's Huntington Bank Stadium. However, the crowd is more on top of the field. Very similar.
I was going to say that's a different 54,000.
Yep. It is loud. It is obnoxious. And if I can take a shot at my favorite fan base, the game against Michigan State, Manny, candidly probably had 26,000 people there at its max. That is not what the Gophers will be traveling to on Friday night when they take on Oregon. It is not about covering the spread. You don't win anything for covering the spread. But Oregon opened up as 21.5-point favorites. I honestly thought it would be a little bit more. I thought it would maybe be 23.5, 24.5. To your point, Manny, can the Gophers they were competitive at Cal. Part of the Cal game, what was frustrating is they could have won the game and just didn't. But can the Gophers, for the first time in the Big Ten season, look competitive on the road? And a lot of that, Manny, is going to come down to the quarterback. Can you keep him upright? Can you get him receivers in space? And are you able to move the ball, albeit for one drive? Can you have a few drives that looked a little bit like the Ohio State game early when you went down the field, kicked a field goal? Can you have a few of those drives early to get the team believing and buying in? And maybe that sparks your defense a little bit, which I do not trust at all. When you talk about Oregon, they can do a lot of different things, but nobody's numbers stand out specifically as, oh my gosh, quarterbacks pass for over 3,000 yards. Oh my gosh, this running back has over 1,000 yards. They don't need it because they can beat you with multiple different players. Yeah. Oregon's Dante Moore comes into the game. He has just over 1,800 yards passing, or almost 1,800 yards passing. But Manny, here's what scares me. 19 TDs to 4 interceptions against a Gophers defense that has really struggled this year. Aside from, again, Nebraska all game long, Michigan State for the first half. Okay, if you can get pressure on the quarterback like that, maybe you do have a chance. But I'm looking to be competitive. I think covering the spread, but not just covering it, to your point, can you lose by 10 to 14 points would be great. But that starts with the offense being able to move the ball consistently and put some points on the board. And I would really love to see that from Drake Lindsay against Oregon, to feel confident that the Gophers can go to Wrigley and win when they take on Northwestern. So I'm looking to be competitive, which, yeah, I know people are going to take shots at that, being competitive, not playing to win. Whatever, take your shots. Comment below, please. But I more or less just want to see the quarterback continue to develop and look comfortable in a big spot on the road.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to apologize for asking the team to be competitive, because to me, it's like I think what the important thing for the Gophers to do in this game is to go out and just play to win the game. Try to win the game.
And
because
have fun.
You know what? Yeah,
and have fun. That sounds stupid, but have fun doing it.
You have nothing to lose at this point. Nobody in America outside of you guys think that you're going to win this football game. No, Manny Hill doesn't think it. Ross Brendel doesn't think it. Nobody else at Score North thinks it. Like, no, I mean, nobody is expecting you to win this game. So just go out, play to win the game. Hey, PJ, if it's 4th and 2 at the Oregon 43-yard line, you can go for it. That's all right. You can do that. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to get it, and then Oregon goes down and scores a touchdown. They were probably going to do that anyway. So go out, just try to win the game. Do the best you can. Put your best foot forward. Put your best effort forward. You do want to try and get out of there as healthy as you can, but that, honestly, I mean, it's kind of a cliche because you say that every week. You never want to have any injuries, no matter who you're playing, whether you're playing Oregon or you're playing Rutgers or Buffalo in the first week of the season. You always want to come out of those games healthy. Northwestern State, for goodness sakes. So to me, it's just approach the game as if you have a chance to win it and go out. You've got a quarterback that is capable of throwing the ball down the field. Try to throw the ball down the field. If it gets intercepted, it gets intercepted. I mean, Oregon is that good, especially on defense. So it's going to be hard, but you're never going to have a chance if you don't put your best foot forward, if you don't put together a game plan that's going to give you your best chance of having success. And I think that's going to be the most important thing. We talked about how times in the past where they get an opponent on the road, especially where, there's minimal chance of winning, and they just kind of, PJ has a tendency to play a little timidly a little bit. And so I don't want to see that. Just let it all fly. Let it all hang out there for that game on Friday night and see what happens. And maybe you get some bounces to go your way. And then you look up and, like I said, you might be down just 21-17 going into the fourth quarter. And then at that point, you got to be feeling pretty good because then you have a legitimate chance of winning the game. So just put your best foot forward and see what happens.
Hat tip to Oregon, who went to an incredibly tough place to play. Just ask the Gophers and PJ Fleck. They go to Kinnick Stadium. They win a slugfest yesterday by a final score of 18-16. That is a classic Iowa Kinnick Stadium score. Shout out to my guy, Atticus Sappington, with one of the best names in college football, for doing his job and helping kick Oregon to a big victory, all but eliminating Iowa from college football playoff contention. Let's shift gears a little bit, Manny, to Big Ten basketball. This is going to be the first time on this program, on this form of this show, and we are going to do this throughout the year. You're going to continue to join me at least once a week, probably when we get into heavy basketball season, twice a week where it warrants it, talking Gopher men's basketball. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, shout out to Bob Motzko and the Pride on Ice for getting a nice sweep and maybe finally turning things around a little bit for the Pride on Ice. They get something called Long Island University next weekend, so here's to hoping that the Gopher men's hockey team will have won 4 games in a row. I do plan to talk more Gopher hockey here.
Hey, man, after seeing what happened when they got to the championship game all those years ago and got their butts kicked by Union, any school that I've never heard of before is still dangerous when it comes to college hockey.
And also Union, by the way, they had players who were AARP eligible when they beat the Gophers. I think a lot of those players are now already in retirement homes. But again, I want to talk basketball here shortly, but the Gophers are allowed to play by those same rules too. And I know it's a little bit more difficult perhaps at the University of Minnesota when you can get the cream of the crop young talent. I get that. And by the way, this is probably the first year since year 1 since Bob Motzko has been here that the team, they're going to have a tough time making the NCAA tournament. They still can if they play well in the Big Ten. Well, they can also win the conference tournament and get in. So their season's not over, but I'm not calling for Bob Motzko's head at this point. I do believe if he coaches here long enough, he will find his way back or find his way to a national championship. We'll save that conversation for a different day, but good to see the Gophers get a Big Ten sweep by taking on Notre Dame at the Mooch and winning 2 games there. Gopher basketball, Manny, I would say the season is off to the start you would expect. The Niko Medved era is 2-0. The Gophers handled Gardner-Webb 87-60. We have lost to Gardner-Webb. It's been years.
I was going to say, yeah, that's a good accomplishment there, beating Gardner-Webb finally.
I think, was that Dan Munson's final game, or was that close to his final game all those years ago?
It was close because he didn't get fired. He resigned, right?
I think he was told you should resign.
Yeah, because they had started out like 2-5, and yeah, that was a rough year.
That was tough.
That was a rough year.
The Gophers beat Elkhorn State yesterday, 95-50. Wednesday, business picks up a little bit when they take on Missouri before coming back home next Saturday night to take on Green Bay. Missouri undefeated. They've been in the big dance 2 of the last 3 years. We know the Gophers would eventually like to get there. That's why Niko Medved was brought home from Fort Collins, Colorado. Cade Tyson was perhaps the big get for Niko Medved out of the transfer portal. Jalen Crocker-Johnson had solid experience with Niko at Colorado State. He did follow him from Fort Collins to Dinkytown. Cade Tyson, interesting story. He had a few really nice years at Belmont, had double digits in scoring both years, transferred to North Carolina, got roughly 8 minutes a game, Manny, but was averaging just about 2.5 points a game. He transfers to Minnesota. He scored 30 points in game 1, 21 points in game 2. Again, I don't really know what that means with the quality of the opponent, but I think it's a good sign. And what I really want to spend time here with you, Manny, over the final few minutes of this podcast is we've talked a lot about defining what success for the Gopher football team looks like the rest of the way. I think at bare minimum, we have both said you got to finish 7-5 and beat Wisconsin. You go 8-4 and beat Northwestern. That's great. Well, heck, if you go 9-3 and beat Oregon too and run the table, that's even better. But we've spent a lot of time talking about defining success for the Gopher football team. People love to rip on the Gopher basketball non-conference schedule. Oh, you don't play enough regional opponents. Oh, you play a bunch of cupcakes. Well, sure, them and 98% of the other teams in college basketball. The non-conference schedule is a little tricky this year. There are some games, including Missouri here in just a few days, that could be difficult. They host San Francisco in a couple weeks, who's been a pretty good mid-major team. They've been to the NCAA tournaments. I think there's another decent program on there as well.
Green Bay. Isn't Green Bay kind of decent? Was Green Bay decent?
Well, the ESPN matchup predictor gives Niko a 98.5% chance to win that game. So they might not be they might not be decent this year. But I know the landscape of all college sports has changed. Again, go back to Kirk Cignetti at Indiana, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt in football. I get it that, oh, well, Niko's here. You have to give him 2-3 years. You don't necessarily have to do that anymore. But I do think you need to view Gopher basketball, Manny, in the prism of, without being mean to our own fan base, understand your lot in life. This is a program that historically goes to the NCAA tournament about once out of every 4 years. When they have made deep runs, they were cheating. Say what you want about that. I'm sure everybody else was cheating. They were just the ones that got caught.
Yep.
Niko also, we all knew he was going to get the job. It was pretty apparent he was going to get the job, especially when coaches started getting hired in the coaching cycle and the Gophers hadn't had one yet, and Niko was coaching a team into the Sweet 16. He did get here a little bit later. So when you're ducking into the transfer portal, and I know, Manny, people were basically in the transfer portal, coaches saying, hey, Niko's coming here, so you should come here too. I get that. But for the kids, until they actually see that he's there, I think it's a tougher sell. He did get here a little bit later, and it was a pretty barren roster. And not to be mean, when I look at this roster, I don't necessarily see a team that's going to compete at a super high level. I'm hoping to be wrong, But the word of the day to me, Manny, is competitive. Remember when Ben Johnson's team in year one, and I know people don't want to hear this, Ben Johnson's team played hard and was awfully scrappy in year one and probably won a few games that they shouldn't. If this Gopher basketball team can win most of their non-conference games, I don't expect them to beat Missouri. But if they can win 80, 90% of their non-conference games and find a way to be plucky and scratchy, and I guess at this point, Manny, qualify for what's the new tournament? Because we don't go to the NIT anymore. We go to the 16-team random tournament of the power schools. I'm already blanking on the name, which means we have too many tournaments.
Yeah.
But if the Gophers can just, again, be competitive, maybe qualify for one of those postseason tournaments, I can be happy with that. And they don't even need to do that. I just need to see signs in year one that the Gophers hired a basketball coach who's going to be successful here for a decade or so. Very similar, if not perhaps more so than the football coach that the University of Minnesota hired about 10 years ago.
So they're going to play, they've got how many games on the Big Ten schedule? Is it 20? Are they playing 20 games now?
I think it's still 19.
Is it 19? Well, either way, so let's say it's 19. I think for me, it's, can you go, if it's 19 Big Ten games?
I'll fact check for you because I should know that.
Can you go 5-14 in the Big Ten? That's kind of what to me, that's kind of where the benchmark is for me to feel good about like what Niko Medved can do with this program going forward. Can they get to like 4 or 5 Big Ten wins? Because then if you have a good non-conference schedule, you know, if you play well in the non-conference, then that would probably put you at around 500 overall. So if you can do that, I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like again, I don't know how many total games exactly that they play, but I'm looking for like a 15 and
20.
15 type of. Is it 20? Okay.
It's so 20. I should never doubt you. Never again.
So I'm looking at like 5 and 15 in the Big Ten. Now that's a very low, that's a low bar. It's a very low bar, but I think that is I think that's doable. And I think if you can get to that point, because then you're probably looking at, like I said, like a 500-ish overall record. So like a 15 and 15 type of, record, or 16, 15, something like that. And sort of in that range. That's, to me, that's kind of what I'm looking for to feel good about it. Now we're going to do a little, you're going to quiz me on a Gopher team from, decade or so ago later on that season didn't go quite that well as I'm hoping for this team. We'll get to that a little bit later, but that's, well, heck, we talked about the year that Dan Munson resigned. That team was not very good, and they were at the bottom of the Big Ten, and they finished, I don't think they got to double-digit wins overall either. So I think basically what I'm getting at is, can you avoid that kind of season? Now, we've seen it happen before with this program, so we know it's possible, but I feel like with what we've seen so far in these first couple of games, I feel like there's enough talent here to where you can maybe avoid that kind of a season, a 2-18 type of Big Ten season. That's kind of what I want to avoid if I'm looking for good signs for this team. So I think if they could get up until like 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 Big Ten wins, and then you end up maybe a couple of games over 500, you get into one of those postseason tournaments that you're talking about, then I think that can be viewed as a success, and at least it gives me a sense that this has the potential to work long term for Niko Medved.
The basketball tournament I could not remember was the Crown, and that features a total of 16 teams from the Big 12, Big East, and Big 10, which is why you no longer see those teams, for the most part, participating in the NIT, which I would be just fine with the NCAA tournament and one other tournament. We do not need the NIT. I think that's the one we should keep. We do not need the Crown. And I think we still have the College Insider or CBI. I'm pretty
CBI.
sure, but don't quote me on that. The other brand name opponent I was thinking of in the non-conference for our Gopher basketball team, former NIT foe, who I believe beat the Gophers in the NIT semifinals or championship about 10 to 15 years ago, Stanford University is who the Gophers will see at some point later this year. I'm with you, Manny. I don't have grandiose expectations this year. It would be fun if maybe we saw something here and found something here. But to me, this year, I kind of liken it to the old system. You go back 5 to 7 years before players could move so freely and before you could pay players. I want to see this as a good foundational year for the future. And I want to try and get to the point where I don't ever expect, I think there's going to be people that are going to be upset. Let's say the Gophers make it. Let's just say they make it to the NCAA tournament next year, but in year 3, they don't. I think that's going to upset a lot of people. It's not going to upset me. If this Gopher basketball program can get to the point, if they go to NCAA tournaments every year, great. I do think that they can, but if they can at least get to the point where, again, Gophers taking on Missouri this week. Missouri's been to 2 tournaments in the last 3 years. If the Gophers can get to that point, they've never been to that point. So
every other year. Can you go every other year?
So that should be celebrated and exciting. And we've seen it here in the marketplace. I'll be honest about this. I don't think apples to apples, and I'll choose my words carefully here because I love St. Thomas University and I'm really excited to go look at their new arena here in a handful of days. But apples to apples, if the Gophers and St. Thomas are recruiting the same kid 99% of the time, that kid is, well, maybe not 99. Let's go with 95% of the time. They're going to go to the University of Minnesota because it's Big Ten. But business has picked up in your own backyard with Lee and Penny Anderson Arena. Manny, the place, again, I've not been there in person yet, but everybody that I know that have seen it, including a few people last night and a handful who went to a hockey game, which, again, I've said for years, if you play hockey in this state and you're not worried about St. Thomas in the long run, you should be. Business has picked up for both Gopher hockey and Gopher basketball with solid competition in a decent conference right down the road in a brand new, beautiful arena. And Manny, hockey's changing conferences next year. I'm not convinced that St. Thomas is always going to be in the Summit League, which is already a great league. So business has picked up for the University of Minnesota, and they need to be crossing their T's and dotting their I's just to protect their own backyard. Maybe I'm even overselling it at 95%. I think there's plenty of reasons why a kid would want to go to St. Thomas. But the Gophers should still have their pick of the litter for the most part, but it's not as easy as it was 3-4 years ago. And that's just in your own state. So can Niko get this program to a point of just every year when you see the Gophers are on your schedule, oh, we can't take this opponent lightly, or this is not just a game that we can count as a win. That is what I am looking for overall expectations for not just this year, but for the Niko Medved era in general.
Yeah, I think you just have to look at, just trying to build this thing year after year after year, to use the old cliche that we saw during the Jerry Kill football days was, brick by brick. I mean, but it's true. I mean, you do have to kind of build this thing. And yes, it's the landscape of college athletics has changed with NIL and being able to pay players and the transfer portal and all of that. But that should also open up more opportunities for you to get the kind of players that you want to come here to play for the University of Minnesota. I mean, so that's going to be the big key. And I think that's a big reason. And, in addition to Niko having previous ties to the program and to the university, it's his home, basically. It's a homecoming for him. But also, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We've seen what he has done at 2 previous places and how he has built up those programs as well, and culminating with him getting Colorado State to the Sweet 16 last year. So we know it's possible. I think he's the right guy for the job. Makes a lot of sense. He can do this. He's built for this. And now I think it's just going to come down to, playing the same game that Iowa and Wisconsin and Northwestern and Illinois are all going to play in the Big Ten. Illinois is a program, obviously, that has had a lot more success than Minnesota, really going back decades, if we're being honest. But it's not impossible for you to get to that level. It's going to take some time, but it's not impossible. So I think the goal just has to be just taking it one step at a time. When you got a chance to get a good player, get him in here. If he's a senior, like the young man, Mr. Tyson is, then you have him for 1 year and great.
Correct. And go do it again in the portal, because where the Gophers are going to be at too, for the most part, they're still going to have to find gems. They'll have money from time to time, but they're going to have to spread it in different ways. And I know NIL is getting more regulated, but it still is. It's not the wild west it was 12 months ago, but it's still the Wild West. And until it gets a little bit more regulated, a place like the University of Minnesota is still going to be up against it for a little bit, unless you get some donors like Texas Tech or even Indiana who want to give you millions of dollars to help your football and basketball programs.
And what it's going to take, Ross, is maybe at the start, these first couple of years, it's going to take maybe some extra work. It's going to take some overachievement, maybe.
Yep.
So in a year where you're not expected, I said the benchmark is, can you go 5-15 to the Big Ten? Going 8-12 in the Big Ten this year is not going to hurt you.
Yep.
Nobody expects you to do that. It's not going to hurt you at all.
Can you upset a top 15 team, a top 10 team at some point? Can you do those things to get yourself on the radar, or get some kids that are thinking about Minnesota? Perhaps that will tilt the scales or tip the scales a little bit towards Minnesota's direction. Okay, I tipped you off before we started that we're going to do Mania Mania, but we're going to do a basketball program this time around. And I told you it's roughly a decade ago. It is the 2015-2016 Minnesota Golden Gopher basketball team. If I had to give you one word as a hint, Manny, this team was ratty. Yeah. And they were. Any idea what their overall record was, Manny?
I believe, okay, it's one of two. They either went, because I remember this year I associate very much with the aforementioned Dan Bunsen resigning 7 games in and Jim Molinari taking over for the rest of that year. That year was a pretty bad year as well. I'm going to say this team they either went 9-22 or 8-23. I'm going to say they went 8-23.
They did go 8-23. That is
no, I think the other
impressive.
Team went 9-22.
Do you know what they went in the Big Ten?
Oh God. Did they even win it? I think they won. I think they won a Big Ten game or two. What were they playing? Were they playing 18 Big Ten games at that point? I think so.
They were playing 18.
Okay. I'm going to say they went. I'm going to say they went 2-16.
They did go 2-16. They had a big win, Manny, at home against a top 6 opponent. Actually, they might have been number 1 in the country at that point. They may have finished 6th in the country. Do you remember who they beat? I believe this was the Joey King crying game that people made memes out of. Unless, could that have been Indiana? We'll have to go back and look at that. We'll have to fact check that. No, it would have been this game because Joey King was on this team.
Who did they beat? And it was late in the year too, right? Because they had lost. I want to say they had lost 12 games in a row or something, and it was getting really bad.
It was late in the year, Manny. It was their first Big Ten win.
I'm gonna say it was either Indiana or I think Maryland had a pretty good team that year. Was it Maryland?
It was Maryland. You are such an assassin at this. You are returning to your old form. We've only done this one time where you were off your game, and you are incredibly on your game today. Let's close with a few player stats here once I can get through all of these pop-ups, which I should have deleted prior to recording. Okay.
I want to say
Manny,
Nate Mason was Nate Mason was a leading scorer.
I love that you know. I love that you know the question that I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I just remembered this year and just how awful it was.
Nate Mason did lead the team in scoring that year. I can give you points. Allegedly he had 373 points. Does that make sense? I guess that kind of jives, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that would have been like 12 points a game, maybe.
I have no idea why it's not listing points per game here.
I'm doing sort of like off the top of my head math here, but
are you doing the math?
Trying to.
Yeah, he did lead the team in scoring that year. I have no idea why I can't get points per game. There it is, 13.8 points per game, Manny, for Nate Mason. Do you care to guess who led the team in? I'm going to go with total rebounds per game. Who led the team in total rebounds per game? Very familiar name.
Would that have been Joey King?
It is not Joey King. Joey King that year had 3.8 rebounds per game.
Oh, no, it was Jordan Murphy, wasn't it?
It was.
I think Jordan Murphy was a freshman, right?
It was, and that was Jordan Murphy's freshman year. You are correct. And I'll say this. Even though it was early on in his career, hard to believe, Manny, that team could only win 8 basketball games because Jordan Murphy was a great player who I do believe at some point is going to have his name in the rafters at the University of Minnesota. Yeah. He probably should, correct?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, the team never did anything of, real national consequence, but that still doesn't mean he did not have one heck of a career. Do you want to guess who led the team in assists? This will be the final one.
Was that Nate Mason too?
That was also Nate Mason, followed up by our guy, Dupree McBrayer. And that is a quick look at your 2015-2016 Minnesota Golden Gophers men's basketball team. A little Mania Mania where Manny shows us his impeccable memory when it comes to Minnesota Golden Gophers athletics and sports in general. If you ever run into Manny in public, people will remember at the State Fair, I quizzed Manny on Super Bowls. Just ask him about Super Bowl locations, scores, and MVPs, and you will be amazed. Manny, we're going to do this again either late Friday night or early Saturday morning, talking about can we have I don't like using the word moral victory, but can you and I, Manny, be reviewing a game of either epic proportions when it comes to an upset or just a game where we go, hey, they were competitive. They looked functional. That was good. We're going to do that late Friday night or early Saturday morning. I'm looking forward to it, bud.
I am too. And I will say I would be utterly shocked if the Gophers win this game, but I don't think it's impossible because for as good as Oregon is, they've had a couple games this year where the offense isn't quite as crisp. Now, granted, it was up against good defenses. Iowa last week, Wisconsin held them to 21 points a few weeks ago. It is possible, not very likely, but if they can get some things to go their way, who knows?
Here's what I like, Manny. Oregon will be on 6 days rest. The Gophers will be on 13. And if you can apply what PJ Fleck has done in bowl games, now I know he was out recruiting. I know they were probably doing some advanced prep on Northwestern and Wisconsin. I get all that. But just the fact that they will have had an extra week to take on Oregon, I am hopeful they can cover that 21.5 points, but we'll talk about it late next Friday or Saturday morning. That is Manny Hill, I believe, still at Manny Hill 84 on the X machine. I am at the Ross Brendel on the X machine. Please, if you are listening to this podcast, please subscribe, please like, please review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please comment below and make sure you are subscribing to Score North. Thanks to Manny, and we will talk again real soon later on this week, as a matter of fact, with Thor Nystrom for more Gophers 101.